BWI is live with a big show today. Penn State football will find out the future of its quarterback commitment recruiting carousel one way or another. Peter Bourque has his decision later today, and then another backfield commitment decision coming down this afternoon. We're going to preview all of that. Plus, Ryan has been helter-skelter all over trying to find out where the coaches are, who they're meeting, and what that means about the recruiting efforts as this contact period continues and gets into the final stages before official visits come up at the end of the month. So there's so much stuff going on today. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. That's Sean Fitz in your top right corner, or if you're listening, just imagine him in the top right corner. And Ryan Snyder has the bottom all to himself, has that bottom row as part of the BWI live crew here on our Thursday recruiting show. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. And of course, like the video, subscribe, all that great stuff. Get that out of the way because it's going to be a big show. And I'm just going to jump right into it because Penn State fans, they want to know. Peter Bourque decision day. Penn State, Virginia Tech, or Georgia. There has been drama back and forth. People are saying Penn State's out of it. People are saying Penn State's in it. People are saying Penn State's out of it. They're back in it. It's just been a very exciting week for news releases and leaks. This feels a little bit like it feels a little bit like free agency in the NFL, where you got all the rumors swirling right before the opening of the decision day, and then suddenly the decision is made, and we're all prepping for it. So, Fitz, can you just give us the lay of the land as where we stand on Thursday, May 14th at 10 a.m. before this decision is made, and how all this has gotten here?
Bad news. My most updated info is like 9:50. So I checked in earlier. Apparently, Bourque has not told any of the schools that he's where he's going, which is a testament to that recruitment. I think it's been all over the place the last couple of weeks as he continues to analyze everything that's potentially coming his way. I think it's Georgia. I'm not strong about that. I would not put money down on it. Please never put money down on kids going to college, or unless it's your own kids. But no, I think it's Georgia,
a lot of money then.
Virginia Tech. Yeah, I think it's Georgia, Virginia Tech. Penn State's been in touch. Like I reported all along that like those two sides have been in touch. It hasn't been as intensive. I think they've been more intensive about the contact they've had with Will Wood. They're trying to figure out, or they were, they went in, they sent the entire. Sent the house really on Will Wood Friday night and sent Jake Waters to Tabor on Tuesday to watch Peter Bourque throw. So like not ability, sorry, my vocabulary, not great today. The vigor in which they are going after one does not seem to align with the other. I think that's kind of the context clues that they've picked up along the way from Bourque. And on top of that, Will Wood's moved up the board. I mean, it sounds like spin. I'll admit it, but you talk to people in that building, and there's a lot of Will Wood fans in that building, including the guy at the top. Matt Campbell's a big Will Wood fan. So you take a look at all those things, and I think that's really the most logical outcome. Will Wood, Penn State, Boston College, still the two, but I think we'll have a decision. Here we go again, mighty soon.
Yeah. You said that, I think, last week, and we still are in the soon category. Like, as much as I know you wrote this in your article, I think it was this morning or last night, about how every day feels like a dog years, and every hour feels like it's an infinity for fans when they want this information. But we still are within kind of a time frame of this is happening pretty quickly in the totality of a recruiting process, especially for a guy who has a very new, I would say, relationship with the staff compared to the Peter Bourque relationship. And that is also colored by the fact that we've been covering Peter Bourque since he was in like 9th grade. So Ryan, I wanted you to chime in here and give any additional thoughts or kind of lay of the land that you have as far as Peter Bourque and the situation with his decision today.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's going to be Will Wood for Penn State, not Peter Bourque. I think at the end of the day, Penn State would have loved to have had Peter Bourque, but I think, we need to, as a recruiting service, even to some degree, and as a reporter, the money part of all this needs to, maybe it's hard to say needs to be discussed more because it's hard to know without details, but that's a major part of how this all played out. And I think it's pretty obvious, or not obvious, but it feels likely, that they're going to have to pursue another quarterback to some degree. And, when someone like Peter Bourque is trying to, I don't know, of upwards of $1 million. I don't know if that's fair to say, but somewhere in that ballpark compared to what you could get a Will Wood for, which is, I'm guessing, somewhere degree that's definitely lower, whether that's half or whatever it may be, you have to weigh that whole situation. And I think for fans, we've been so, or over the years, they've been so ingrained of like, just get the best players possible, yada, yada. But
Yeah.
that's, that money aspect is such a major part of it now. And that's not just why they're going for Willwood. Let me also clarify, like Matt Campbell's been very high on Willwood for a long time. And that has been pretty clear. I feel like since really over a month now, I would say. Not that he didn't want Peter Bourque, of course, but that I don't think Matt Campbell sees them as drastically different than maybe some others people do. What's funny is between Aiden Gibson and Will Wood, I've heard a lot of Breece Hall, Brock Purdy in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
When asking about those guys, and not at all am I saying or is any source saying that those guys are going to become those two kind of players, but with Will Wood specifically, like the mannerisms are very similar, even just from the way he throws to the kind of leader that he is,
The way he's built. Yeah.
Brock Purdy. Yeah, Brock Purdy never had the strongest arm. Will Wood, I don't think either. I mean, I think we all would agree Bourque has a stronger arm and all those kind of things. But what Will shows is good ball placement, accuracy, great anticipation, all those kind of things that I think Brock Purdy a pretty good quarterback, and even to some degree, kind of similar to Rocco in to some degree. I would lean towards Rocco having a little bit of a better arm, strength wise, than what we've seen from Will Wood. But obviously, Will Wood's still a junior/senior in high school, so long way to go there. But that's kind of the background, I feel like, as far as how that kind of played out. I think Matt Campbell's a major reason why this all started getting swung in the Will Wood direction.
Stephen Light says the brave only die once. Kudos on the topic. Well, it's the most important thing happening today, and of course, we're going to be covering that on the BWI live show. Appreciate you though, Stephen. Blumsky13, you guys have outlined this, but he just wants to know here in the chat, and I think this is a great conversation point of one. How much of it is one, Penn State likes Will Wood more versus two, they like both, but the difference in talent does not equal the increased costs into getting into a bidding war with Virginia Tech and Georgia. So in those two buckets, Fitz, I asked this a little bit more directly, and I'll ask this in a little bit later in a different way, but how do you view those two scenarios that Blumsky is putting up here?
Well, first off, I think if you asked anybody in that building, and by the way, this is a thing that we lose sight of here, is when we say Penn State liked one guy better, it's never a consensus. You ask people in that building, you ask 10 people in that building, 6 say Will Wood, 4 say Peter Bourque, whatever. I mean, number one, it matters what the top guy says, because that makes sense. Number two, it matters what makes sense from a budgetary standpoint. And I'll say that, like, there's no real consensus. I think you've asked everybody, Peter Bourque, more talent, like more baseline talent. We've seen, watching Penn State quarterback recruiting, we've seen talent, and it hasn't always played out to those tangible results on the football field. So, and I'm not saying that's what's going to happen here, but I'm seeing a lot of that in terms of what people think that the next 4 years can look like with these two. They think Will Wood's a winner. They think he is a guy that has been sort of around the block in terms of chip on his shoulder, everything that you would say about Brock Purdy, Trace McSorley, all these kinds of things. And it's kind of baseless speculation, because he's a high school kid. Like, you don't know how they're going to react until they get into the program. You don't know how they're going to react when they take reps with guys that are 3 years older than them, beside them in practice. Like, it's very, very difficult to understand how this is going to come. But I will say this: you're always being evaluated. If you're a prospect, whether you're a quarterback or any position, you're always being evaluated. That's not just going out there and throwing the football. That is going out there, speaking with the coaches, them picking up on your body language, them picking up on how many steps ahead that you potentially think. That's a huge one for Taylor Mauser, for Matt Campbell, in terms of making decisions. And that's going to lead to accurate throws. That's going to lead to all the things. It's a chain reaction. So you are always being evaluated as a prospect. And bad body language, you're slumped over in a meeting, you're on your phone your entire. I mean, there was a guy this cycle, he was on his phone the entire visit. Penn State, we're not going to recruit him. Like, that's a bad sign, because it's not the way that you need to attack these next 4 years. And I think that's becoming a bit cloudier, because the players do have a lot of power, and understanding what kind of money is coming their way, and understanding that they are the ones that really hold the cards in this situation. But they're still, on this side of things, on the coach side of things, there's still more wiggle room in, hey, we'll just go find the next guy. And I think that's kind of what happen in this situation. Is not that Peter Bourque is bad, not that Peter Bourque is one of those guys that, you know, is on his phone all the time, but Will Wood established himself and really impressed and won over a lot of guys in that building that maybe didn't think that he was physically what a Penn State quarterback should be. So I'm excited to see what the next step is, but just watching the last couple of weeks, maybe the last month or so, side by side, I think Will Wood has really won them over. And again, he won over the guy at the top, and that's the guy you're trusting to run your program.
Yeah. So it's an interesting point that NIL is a factor in this, and all that stuff. I would agree. Watching the full film, if you watch Peter Bourque and Will Wood is a better decision maker. He's a better quarterback at the position at the moment. Now, that's not Peter Bourque is bad, but you know, there's just some decisions and there's some things that Bourque does with the ball that are not as crisp as what Will Wood does with the football. But you're not going to win a national championship in high school, and how you are playing in high school is not the best you're going to play in your career. Presumably, you're going to get better at everything as you develop in a program. And as much as I don't like, at a certain point, you have developed, right, mentally and physically. So in the draft, in the NFL draft, is the most comparable situation we have to recruiting, right, where a guy has had coaching for 4 years in college, and if he doesn't get it, like, I don't believe you're just going to turn it on in the NFL if you just don't get football. But this is the development period. And so Peter Bourque has more talent, physically has more talent than Will Wood. And so I guess the question is, if NIL were not a factor, do you think Peter Bourque would have been Penn State's quarterback before Will Wood entered the chat, guys? Because that is a part of this that I think is a driving force of the comparison. Maybe Will Wood has moved ahead, right? And all those things that Fitz just talked about. But talent does matter. And so, like, I think fans that are going to look at this and say, yeah, this is all spin, are going to say, well, Will Wood is the more talented player with the higher upside. And so, Ryan, how do you judge those factors when it comes into
Didn't we just talk about this last week,
conversation?
Sean? Didn't we do this last week?
I'm
Pretty sure we did, because I said I don't think Peter Bourque would end up here, and you said you think he would have.
I think that he would have, but I'm not being mean to T Frank here. It doesn't matter. NIL is such an ingrained part of what they're doing now, and I know it's only been a couple of years, but it frankly does not matter what he would have done beforehand, because there's a lot of guys, especially you look back to the last class, Joey O'Brien, those guys, you know, all those guys, like, probably end up at Penn State in a pre-NIL world. But again, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's one of those ones that makes your head spin, because Penn State has really done for years a wonderful job recruiting these guys, and then they get to the end and it doesn't matter because of the money. And that's part of the game. Like, you can sit there and whine about it, but it's just part of how this is played now. And it's why you're seeing the recruiting rankings playing out the way they are, with a lot of money at the top.
It's a question that, and again, I asked last week. There's going to be a lot of people watching today that maybe didn't catch it last week, so just wanted to cover that ground again, because it's something that has come up, you know, in the chat, over on the Blue White Illustrated message board. There are people that want to know these kind of things. C. Paul King is asking the pie in the sky question. I think we've answered that pretty clearly. Is there a chance Penn State can score both quarterbacks? There is not. Just from that monetary perspective, that is not going to be a realistic thing. Peter Bourque has made it clear that NIL is important and that he wants to be compensated for his time in college. And Penn State is not willing to go to that bidding war with Virginia Tech, Georgia, for a top 10 quarterback. So no would be the answer to that one. Any other things that you think are interesting in this particular conversation when it comes to Bourque and Wood and the outlook for what we've got coming up?
I do think that there still can be two quarterbacks in this class. I don't think it's a probability, but you look at other guys, but it's Bourque and Wood is not the combination. That's not the running ticket in 2027. You're maybe, take a look. They like Brody Brenneman a lot down in Florida. He's starting to get on the scene more. I think he just picked up USF. He's got a USF official visit coming up, so that one makes a lot of sense there, being right up the road. But I think that two quarterbacks is still on the table, but got to get one in first. And what they're doing is trying to get Will Wood across the line and make that happen.
Yeah. This is something I asked on the show out loud, and I wanted to ask you guys this yesterday, and I'm not we've kind of closed the book on the Peter Bourque conversation, but when you're looking at the way they've approached certain positions, we'll get to Aiden Gibson a little bit later in the show. Do you get the sense that Penn State is just going and getting the targets they want, or are they going and getting the targets they know they can get and they can secure, as opposed to going into official visit season when negotiations happen and you can have some of these bidding wars and you may end up with none of your top prospects because you waited for the one you wanted at a certain position? Do you think that they're kind of, I'm not saying the safe route, but they're going with things that they feel confident with instead of just trying to nail the upside? Ryan, do you have a sense of that?
No. I mean, okay. I think they're going after the guys they want. I don't know how. Okay. I don't think that they're looking at like, oh, this guy, look at his rankings and all these schools that are after him. I don't think that's it in their vocabulary at all, right? I mean, they're going after the guys that they see as good fits for their program. And I mean, I feel like it's funny because I feel like I've talked about character and all those kind of things so much over the last handful of years, and I feel like now it's like even more part of the process. Am I wrong with that, Sean? Like, it just seems like that is hits. I mean, obviously, of course, they want talented players and all those things, but when it comes to character fits and locker room fits, I feel like I hear about that constantly.
They've got a mold that they want to hit. Like, I think that if you spend any time with the players that they brought in from Iowa State, like there's a mold there. Like there's very polite, Midwest polite, all that kind of stuff. I think that kind of stuff matters. At the end of the day, you're going to have ball players too. Some of those guys are really good ball players. So it's a matter of taking the top level, skimming off the top of what they got from Iowa State, like the most talented guys they got there, understanding what's in the region, what's available, turning to Yoda, Terry Smith and saying, hey, how do we recruit these guys? Because that's something that they'll continue to have to learn on the fly, is how to recruit elite talent. And right now it's a mixed bag. So I'm very curious to see how this goes in official visit season. Very similar to last cycle when Penn State, I think, had 20 commits when they went into official visit season. Then when they left, had 23, 24, something like that. So I think that they will, have a little bit higher of a hit rate. I'm looking at the On3 visit list here, and there's a lot of talent coming in from all over the place at a bunch of different positions. There's some positions that we think might be full or close to full, and they're still bringing guys in at those positions too. So they're again learning on the fly how to recruit elite talent. It's going to take some time, and they're going to lose some. Like, you're going to have to prepare yourself for that.
Yeah. Okay. I have this question queued up in the chat as we move on. Well, I should say, first, let's get to today's sponsor, Liberty Lumber Products. They have some really cool things. Here's Justin, the owner of Liberty Lumber Products, to tell you more.
How's it going, Nittany Lion fans? My name is Justin. I'm born and raised in Pennsylvania, and this is my wood shop. We are Liberty Lumber Products. Come here, I want to show you a few things. So my company is now officially licensed with Penn State. So I want to show you the products that are now available on our online store. We now have some coasters that are available. These are handmade by our team here at Liberty Lumber Products. We have some very talented carpenters here. And we also have this cooler that's now available. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to us. Please follow us on our socials and check out what we have coming next. We got some big things.
So they got some really cool stuff over at Liberty Lumber Products. Use promo code PSUFans for 10% off. Link is in the description of the video, and I just threw this up here. They have some more stuff coming. There was a minor accident in the shop that happened a couple weeks ago, so Justin's having to lean in more into the carpentry side of things instead of doing a lot of the business side of things, and he's just been swamped. I've been talking to him about that. Luckily, everyone's okay, so nobody's in serious injury or anything, but they've got more prototypes coming up. These things are officially licensed, and if you want to use promo code PSUFans for 10% off, you can get that 10% off at your first order at Liberty Lumber Products, which does really cool stuff. Those coasters are super popular, so you should definitely grab some because they look super cool and they'll look really cool in your fan cave. Let's move on and talk about the other conversation coming up today, which is, will Penn State have a full backfield by the end of the week? Odoh is a 3-star running back from New Jersey. He's making his decision at 3 p.m. today, I believe. So Fitz, what should we expect? What's going on with Penn State recruiting its running back room for 2027? Actually, Ryan, I'm going to come to you because Fitz looks like he's having an Adam Schefter moment. So I want to make sure.
That's okay. Yeah. I do believe he is on pace to be a Nittany Lion. And I've felt for a long time that Odoh liked Penn State a lot. He visited quite a few times. or the previous staff, and then again, obviously this spring. And we've always kind of looked at Gary Walker, Trey Segara, Aiden Gibson as those three to circle. And I think Odoh is kind of one of those guys who's steadily moved up the staff's board, another good visit, all those kind of things, right? So I think that's trending in Penn State's direction. And I think he's a back that's kind of reminds me of Carson Hansen, if that makes sense. Not a little faster than what Aiden Gibson is, but also powerful. Has some of those tendencies that we've seen from Gibson. Obviously, what is he, 6'1", 215, I want to say, for Odoh. So I think it's a good combination of a lot of guys that they have kind of seen over the years, or they know how to use those kind of guys. Like I said, the comparison I keep getting there is Hansen. So not quite as strong, and I wouldn't say quite as talented vision-wise as Gibson is, but certainly a really good back, strong. Just ran what was it, a 10.8, Sean, that he ran the other day? I think. Yeah. So that's very good. So yeah, I think he's going to be your second running back in this class, and we'll see where things fall beyond that. But I did see Dejon Tally Rhodes is moving up his Indiana OV. Hint, hint. That seems to be a sign of where maybe this is going, because that was another player that I thought could realistically end up at Penn State if he gets the green light.
Fitz, what do you think about the situation here?
Yeah, I agree with everything Ryan said. I think Penn State was able to move, and this one makes a lot of sense when you talk about Savon Huggins being a Jersey guy. T. Frank, we talked on the show a week or so ago about the package, not the package deals, but the running back tandems that Penn State has signed over the years. It's either been two guys from the region or one guy from the region, one guy from far out. And Aiden Gibson coming from South Carolina makes sense that they would go to Jersey for another running back, especially, like I said, Savon Huggins pretty well connected there. The 10.86 helps quite a bit. I mean, you think about how those guys might be tightly bunched. Tally Rhodes there, Javaris Gibson, the former Cincinnati commit. He was certainly up there as well. But, you got a guy in the region that's close to 6 foot, 220, can run a 10.86. You should probably take that guy. If he can play football. If he can play football, you take that guy.
Watching some of his film, he can play football. Super violent runner. I think the way he finishes runs is something that fans will love, and the vision and the patience feel similar to Aiden Gibson. Aiden Gibson, I think, is a better overall player. That's a good transition to talk about Aiden Gibson, Ryan, because we talked about him earlier this week when he committed. Penn State got their first running back in the class of 2027 earlier this week when Aiden Gibson chose the program. You had a chance to catch up with both him and his head coach. So curious what you think about all of that now that you've spoken to them. What were some of the most interesting things that you had coming out of those conversations?
Yeah, I don't think I've made it secret. I really like Aiden Gibson. I like him. I like him on the field. I like him off the field. Incredibly charismatic. A lot of leadership personalities there. Just a great personality overall. I think a lot of things went into his decision to commit to Penn State. He throughout the process, he spoke incredibly highly of Huggins and Mauser, and that was a big part of it. But really, as we got towards the end here, it feels like Campbell and his effort played a massive part in that. I also believe, obviously, the offensive style. He loves catching the ball out of the backfield. One thing I learned from talking to his coach is he was actually a receiver coming into high school, and they realized as the middle school, so 8th grade level, right? We're talking a couple years ago, and they kind of realized right off the bat, even as a 9th grader, that he's probably their best athlete on their team, and they thought at the time, the best way to get the ball to him and actually get him to produce was be at running back more than receiver. And I don't know. This was also their head coach's first year there, so I don't know what their quarterback situation was. I think we talk all the time about how receiver is one of the easier spots to get on the field. Maybe that's different for college and high school. So that's kind of how he started as running back, and then it was taken off from there. And so we talked a little bit about 40 times and things like that. Supposedly he ran a 4.53 at South Carolina. Been clocked with a 22.3 on the catapult. That's pretty good, for a player his size. So. We'll see where things progress as far as physically and all that. But had a good talk with Charles Power about him as well, and just kind of how he continues to prove athletically, and that's something he's really, thinks is encouraging, I guess you'd say, about Aiden Gibson. But on the field, off the field, maybe the recruit I've enjoyed getting to know the most in this class. And I think, Sean, I don't know about him as a freshman. It's going to depend on Quentin, but this is a guy that might contribute pretty early.
Yeah, I mean, it depends people's as well. I mean, you've got not a ton of a log. I mean, we're used to talking. Of course, we spent the last 4 years with the same two guys there, so not as much of a log jam as you would think. From the people that I've talked to, they do think that he can contribute early. And now I don't know what that means, because you can get in there and we could see, maybe you're just you stand out that much on a high school field doesn't really mean all that much on a college field. So we will see physically where he's at when he gets here.
I think that's the thing. Physically gifted enough to do they feel confident in that?
Like, I would say that there's a path for him to do that, especially if he's a good receiver and he can do more than one thing, or in those hard areas for running backs, like Odoh, right? If similar physical size, has the I would say power. You would think, okay, that might start early, but if he has no exposure so far for what I've seen of just kind of looking at him to the passing game. But if you're a running back that can catch the ball and do more than one thing, and it's not obvious what you're on the field to do, then there is a path, even from just like a tactical standpoint, to get a guy on the field.
Are we talking about Quentin Martin still, or do we switch to somebody else? Or?
Well, he's 215 pounds instead of 195.
So sorry, it was too easy there for the taking.
It was. That was a good point. I wanted to also bring this up, Ryan. You put this out on social media. I think this is a quote that Penn State fans are going to love, already do love. I told them I don't want to be promised anything. I want to work for everything I do. A lot of guys say they want to play early and things like that, but I'm coming to work. A guy that seems to have a good perspective on what it means to be good at football and the process of being good at football. And once again, you talked about culture. We talked about recruiting rankings and all the things that we don't know on this side of the curtain. I think you have a better idea getting a chance to talk to some of these kids, but clearly that's a cultural fit for Matt Campbell.
And he admitted too, that quote kind of stemmed from a conversation about the depth chart and how much that impacted them, because obviously, Hansen has one more year, and, Peoples and Quentin Martin will be around, and, of course they have Sheffy too, but this depth chart is way more open, like running back, quarterback, tight end. If you're a young player at those positions, I think you got to really like what you see as far as the depth and what they have on that roster after such a big rebuild. Like, those are three spots that you can come in and feel good about your chances of contributing.
Any other final thoughts here, Fitz, on Aiden Gibson or the running back situation? Because there's some other things we can get to in the BWI mailbag that have cropped up since the show started, but I want to give you one final. We didn't get a chance to get more of your thoughts earlier this week with the video.
No, it seems like a solid group. Like I said, the taking two big backs, I don't know that that's by design. I think it's just kind of the best of what's around theory, which is how they've kind of done it in the past. You mentioned we mentioned the tandems that they've had. You look back to last year with Tyke Hayes and Jabri Wallace-Coleman, like those were two bigger backs that kind of mirror what is here. Now Gibson's a little bit taller guy, but I don't think you have to have thunder and lightning. I don't think you have to have two guys that complement each other, because how often do you really see these guys having to complement each other, if that makes sense? Like you want the best backs. That's what we're going for here. So I think that's what makes sense.
Okay, well, let's get into the BWI mailbag and get some thoughts from you in the chat. If you like the video, there's a ton of people here today because of the title topic and all the things going on with Penn State football. If you're new here, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We do this all the time, giving you the information, giving you the facts of what's going on, along with the analysis and a little bit of opinion. I coax a little bit of the opinion out of these guys. And let's get to your questions. If you got any of those, drop them in the chat. We'll have that in the BWI mailbag. Okay, we got a couple of questions here in the chat. Aiden Harriman wants to know, Notre Dame just flipped a 6'7" tackle from UCLA. Does that change anything for Layton von Brandt? Blumsky asks the same question. He says that's 3 offensive tackles for the Irish. Does that give Penn State a leg up or an avenue for Layton von Brandt? I know this is breaking as we were coming on the air, so I'm not expecting you guys to have the answer, but what do you think about this situation with Layton von Brandt and Penn State, and this news happening with their competition, where I believe Notre Dame was the lead at one point, or they were their most recent lead, Fitz? Is that right?
Yeah, I put in a pick for Von Brandt for Notre Dame the other day, based on what I've been hearing, and felt like that one was coming down to the wire, where he was going to pick Notre Dame pretty soon. As far as an answer to this question, that's kind of why I've been looking at my phone the entire time, trying to figure that out myself. So I don't have an answer there. I would be surprised based on the previous feedback that I've gotten if they didn't take him. But at the same time, there's 3 really good offensive tackles in that group, and we'll continue to monitor the situation. That's the best we can say right now, just because
Yeah.
it's very fresh. So just 10 o'clock is when that other kid committed, and I'll be frank, I did not know that he was on the radar for them. I was just watching for Von Brandt. So.
Yeah. Ryan, anything you want to add? Sounds like you have the similar
Notre Dame and
feeling
Florida
of
were
the
the
situation.
2 schools, right, for Von Brandt. So, I mean, that I thought had a leg up on Penn State, at least is the best way to put that. So I will be very intrigued to learn that situation myself.
I mean, it sounds like Florida's filling up as well. So
that's
like,
what I mean. Yeah. And that's, I think that's
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting.
Are you guys surprised by that? Given, Von Brandt, his recruiting profile, and how long he's been a prospect on everybody's radar, and the connections from the former Penn State staff that are the other places.
It's that time of the year, man. Like, this is like, you got, like, these guys got to learn. I sound like an old man. These guys got to learn. Like,
these guys need to get off my lawn.
Good example. Like, there's a lot of recruits out there that a month ago were like, well, we'll just wait till the official visits, take my time. That ain't how this works no more. It is.
It's interesting.
Get your spot.
This is different. Is this different than last year? Because it feels like this is a big change.
It's been like
last year felt like a lot of these negotiations were happening either during or after official visits, and now it feels like a lot of these guys are making decisions in May.
There's a ton before too, buddy. Yeah, I mean,
it's
I guess Penn State wasn't getting them back then.
It's who has the leverage at this point, and right now the coaches have it. Like, it's going back, it goes back and forth throughout the cycle, and that's every cycle. I don't think it's any different. But we were talking all February and March about how these guys want to wait because they want to do the official visits because they're fun and everybody loves them and everybody has a great time and everything like that. But at the same time, the coaches are like, hey, that spot's not going to be there, and they're bluffing sometimes when they say that, but oftentimes they're not. And you look at what's going on with defensive tackle recruiting right now with Penn State. You look at what they went out and grabbed another offensive lineman last week. Not that that's going to force Von Brandt into a decision or anything like that, but it's taking up spots because it's not necessarily just about the scholarship anymore. Because you can find room for somebody on a 105-man roster, but somebody takes your spot ahead of you and takes your money slot ahead of you, then you're not gonna be happy. So like, I think that there's a leverage play right here via the coaches, the general managers and whatever, where they understand they have this minute window of power right now where they can push back, and they're doing so. And that's why Penn State's got 16 commits right now, about to be 17, maybe 18. So that's how the rocket ship takes off right there. Is it just get a little bit going, and you see it all over the country. You're seeing guys that we were sure would take official visits because they seem like that type of recruitment. All of a sudden, turn around and be like, okay, well, I'm good, thanks.
Well, that is actually a great transition into today's featured question from the Blue White Illustrated Mailbag thread over on the site, which this is from GMAC14. The previous staff was relatively strict regarding not wanting players to visit schools once they committed to Penn State, understanding that no staff can really forbid kids from visiting other programs. What is this new staff's view on that? He went on to say, like, in addition to the question, like, maybe there's a context from what happened at Iowa State versus the attention some of these guys are getting here at Penn State, considering Jameer Dean is looking at Georgia and all of those situations. So I guess what's the feedback, or what's the view you have of the visits and official visits guys can take after they've already committed to this program, and how the staff feels about that, Ryan?
I would say that, I think, Sean, you would agree that earlier on in the previous staff, that was something they tried harder than at the end. And I think, especially as NIL became more prevalent, how much power do you really have from stopping? Especially if this other school's offering more, you know what I mean? Like, you've kind of lost that power. So I don't think that's a trend that we saw a lot towards the end. The last handful of years, there were guys committed, visiting all over the place. And don't get me wrong, every staff's going to try their hardest from preventing it. But you only have so much power to do so. Right now, we're talking about having that power, right? But I think later in the year, and especially if it's a player like Jameer Dean, who his stock is rising, he's doing well in track. There's a lot of more and more eyes are getting on him. There's only so much Penn State can do. So we know they're going to go to visit with him and his family tomorrow night, the entire offensive staff, and they're certainly going to keep trying to chip away, keep him from going to Georgia for an official visit. But as we reported this week, he set that visit for June 12th. It will be after his OV to Penn State, so that'll be another opportunity for them to try and talk him out of it. But I don't know how much power they really have for preventing it. But I also don't know where he stacks on Georgia's board. Like that's kind of the tug and pull of the situation of if he's a really important prospect for Georgia, which I'm not 100% sure where he stands, then that's kind of where you have to weigh the pros and cons of how hard you push against.
Fitz, you got anything on that?
Yeah, I'm actually I did a piece back in February. It's fantastic, if I do say so myself, about Matt Campbell's recruiting at Iowa State in terms of what they were able to do from a timeline perspective, what they were able to do from a decommit perspective. Shockingly low decommit numbers. Now, I will acknowledge on off the top that they're playing with a smaller deck. They were, the talent did not attract Georgia did not swoop in and offer a ton of their guys. They lost Jet Tamalia to Alabama last cycle. But like for the most part, it's been guys that they probably should have lost. Okay, so 2022, they lost a guy to Ohio State, an Ohio kid to Ohio State. They lost R. Mason Thomas, who just got drafted to Oklahoma. But like the next couple of cycles, you're thinking 2-1-1 in terms of decommits. So they were really, really good at holding on to them. Again, acknowledging that it's probably not the same talent level, that we see here at Penn State, but at the same time, that says something. So yes, it's a similar approach. A lot of schools have the similar approach. Like, no, we don't want you visiting anywhere. Why would we want you visiting anywhere? Sometimes it's the reality of the situation, especially when you bring the money into play, because if you break down or you come down too hard on a guy that wants to take visits elsewhere, he's just going to say, all right, well, I'm out. I'm good. Yeah. So like, that's the reality of recruiting right now, which is kind of scary, but at the same time, it's it's what we asked for. So, I think they have done a pretty good job with that. And it's just going to be a challenge for them to learn to live that on the fly right now, because they're going to have Georgia coming after Jameer Dean. You're going to have other schools coming after Samaje Robinson down in Florida. So like, it's going to be all over the place in terms of interest, and it's a new world than they were even recruiting at in Iowa State. But it'd be interesting to see how they track it. But they have a really good track record of doing so.
I have a follow-up question, if you don't mind, and it's something you've talked about. Couple of things that they're learning here, whether it's recruiting this region, whether it's the added attention of a Penn State offer and commitment. Just based on your observations, what do you think is the thing that is the biggest learning curve for them right now, or the thing that you've observed of they are adapting, to what they might have expected, and like how they're trying to go about doing things now that they have this situation of being at Penn State? You have anything on the top of your mind?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is understanding the talent level that it takes here. Like it's and it feels disrespectful to say that to guys that have come through Iowa State, because there've been top draft picks. There've been really, really good players that come through there. But like Will Slagel's a great example there. Like you took him at Iowa State. You took him as your number one. I don't want to say your number one guy, but your first commit in 2027. You got out here. You liked other guys better, and that's a hard conversation that, fortunately, I think for Penn State never really came up with Slagle. Is like, there's other guys in front of you, even though we committed to you a long time ago, albeit at a different school. So like, number one, it's understanding the difference in talent and what it's going to take to win at Penn State. Number two, it's how do you recruit those elite players? Because there's a bunch of guys in the class that are really good football players, really good talents. Have they gone head to head with Ohio State so far and knocked them off? Have they gone head to head? I know Cooper Terwilliger at Notre Dame was a big win for them. But like, there's going to be a world where you have to win those battles more regularly. And that's going to be the biggest challenge for them, is learning how to recruit elite talent, learning how to ebb and flow with paying elite talent, and go with that, because there's really not many, the incredible hyperbole for me, not many worse places to be than right around 15, because you're in that cusp of, yes, you can challenge for a national championship. What does that mean? Does that mean that's 16, 20 teams, whatever? You can challenge for that national championship, but when the top 10 are spending double what you're spending, or whatever it might be, that's a very big gap to overcome. It's one thing to get inside the top 25, to make that leap from 15 to 1. It's a much bigger, much more expensive proposition, and that's what they're learning on the fly right now.
Picking and choosing your spots to some degree.
You can get in to a 12-team playoff at 15, but can you get into the championship game from 15 to 1, I think is kind of the conversation of, there is still, even in this, as we're talking about expanding the playoffs. And by the way, Andy Staples was with us on Tuesday. He had some thoughts on that. You can go check out that show.
And
we talked about that a little bit this week.
To plug Andy, he'll get Matt Campbell on today. He texted me. So that's
excellent.
Nice. Yes.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So make sure you check out Andy and Ari, and here in the Rivals on 3 network. This is a question from the chat. Work with Auntie wants to know, do you have a sense of how Penn State balances value based on high school recruiting with assessing who is probabilistically could be available in the transfer portal? I don't. Jet, is that a quarterback at Alabama? I apologize.
Yeah,
Jet Tamale.
Jet Tamale,
Yeah.
yeah.
Flipped to Bama. So
I don't know if it's about specific players at this stage, but they're absolutely mindful of, hey, we might need to get a transfer quarterback. I think we've talked about that enough. Obviously, Mansky missed most of spring. He was injured last year too. Like, that development has been stalled to some degree if you go back to last fall. And so I think that's obviously they want to see how he does this fall, and hopefully he stays healthy and they see everything they want to see. But, at this stage in the game, I think it's very apparent that they realize that they're going to have to do something with that quarterback room. Because Peyton Falzone, I still have trepidations of whether he lasts that long in that room. And then you're talking about Case Evans, being the only other guy. So I think 2 quarterbacks are going to be added to this roster before 2027. I could even say 3 if they add a second in the high school class. But I think either way, they're going to need somebody to push Mansky at least, if not compete for a starting job. And so that is playing a big part in the Bourque situation, right?
I was going to say that kind of leads to they don't think Bourque can be a year 1 starter.
Yeah.
I mean, if it were worth paying him because they think he might be a guy that could start next year, that changes the math. And I think that kind of gives a insight into that decision. And I don't disagree. There's a lot of things Peter Bourque does really well on film. His offense asks a lot of him. And I know that it's a high school offense and people don't care. You want to know the height, weight, speed stuff. But with a quarterback, what you're trying to do on the field absolutely matters. And, it's not a full college playbook. There's some good stuff in there, but his decision-making sometimes, and I'm not saying he's a slow decision-maker, but, a couple more interceptions, couple more off-target passes that need to work on his footwork. There's things that maybe he isn't a year 1 starter, and so, that's going to play into this conversation as well. This also, just as we're talking about Peter Bourque, when does he announce? I couldn't find a time. I didn't know if you guys knew of a time that he's announcing today or if there is one.
I did not see a time. In fact, I opened Jeremy Johnson from our Georgia site has a primer and it says time unknown. So
okay,
that's all I got.
Both on put in a pick.
Steve just put in a pick for Virginia Tech. So yeah.
How does that? And so this is a fan question. This is I know that this is not necessarily relevant to all of the things that we've talked about of the choices made here, but the perception of James Franklin winning one over on a quarterback to Virginia Tech is not going to sit well with fans. So, I guess I just wanted to get your thoughts and comments on James Franklin beating out, in the end, finally getting Peter Bourque the second time around over Penn State is how it's going to be phrased over Penn State and Georgia. It's going to be a huge recruiting win for James at Virginia Tech. How do you think the narrative of those things plays out? And what's your just opinion on Bourque going to Virginia Tech, guys?
Well, I'd say a couple things. One, that's why you read what we write and pay attention to shows like this, because it's not exactly apples to apples. Would you agree with that? I mean, Penn State has kind of tapped the brakes there. But here, let's also clarify this on the opposite end. We've seen a bunch of guys commit to Penn State recently that, Vatek was in the mix with. That's not apples to apples either, right? That they've 100% beaten out on all those guys. So it goes both ways. I think sometimes we put a little too much stock into oh, gotcha, James, but really we don't know all the details on where that guy stacks up on their board and other details like that. So it goes both ways in my eyes, if that makes sense.
Everyone wants to dunk on a 2-foot rim on social media. That's what it
Sure.
is. So there's an opportunity for it, they're going to do it.
At times you're oh, look at all these offers this guy had, but that offer came 2.5 years ago, and it was when he was a freshman. It's kind of it's a gray area, if that makes sense to me. But yeah, to some
I said, it's touchy in the chat. Jay Ben says, "How about over Georgia?" Just the phrasing of it, because people are going to phrase it the other way. Just
we're not
Georgia. It's going to be phrased the other way.
I hear you, but I got you, Ben. But
if it changes your day that he goes to Virginia Tech, then
don't overthink it.
Shift gears. It does not matter anymore. And T. Frank, I don't know where I said this to you, and I'm wondering if it's on a video that we already recorded that we haven't put out yet, but it doesn't matter who buys who out from under where, or does anything of that nature, because this is how recruiting is working now. You've got to separate the emotionality from it. It's really tough to do with college football. I get it because it's such an emotionally ingrained sport. But this is how things work now. And this is something that you have to go with it. And the end results are going to be what dictate how you should feel about this. And you're not going to know that for a couple of years. So Peter Bourque's going to go, if he's going to go to Virginia Tech, he's going to, sit behind Ethan Grunkmeyer, who, again, see, Frank, all these analysis, all these evaluations don't change. We really like Grunk. We really like Peter Bourque.
I like their quarterback room a lot.
Yeah, that quarterback room. And also it's going to blow up because that's college football now. Because Bryce Baker is there from North Carolina. Troy
I was just
Hume's
trying
there.
to find it to bring it up. Yeah.
So Grunkmeyer, Hune, Bryce Baker. Will Peter Bourque be there? That'll work itself out. And you're going to look at the amount of money that they're paying for that room, and they're not going to get a return on investment for half, maybe 3/4 of it. And that's just how you have to deal with it. Like I'm sorry. That's just how college football is going to work. And it's the same thing for Penn State. Like Penn State probably going to get a second running back today. Are both running backs going to be Katron and Nick? Probably not. The odds are not overwhelmingly in their favor. So that is part of the risk of investment and return on investment that we have to start analyzing here.
So real quick, I got to add one thing. Like, so Daniel Bourque, I see your comment in there about, Matt C got running back Gibson over Franklin and Vatek. So it's a perfect example of kind of what I'm talking about, though. It's like, he had an OV set to Vatek, and then Vatek added Stanley Smart and Kelvin Morrison. They weren't pursuing Gibson at all over the last handful of months. Like, that visit got canceled, didn't get removed from his profile. So it looked like they were still in the mix, but really it was a Rutgers and Penn State battle through the end. So it just goes both ways. We can talk here about, maybe Vatek getting Peter Bourque over Penn State, but the reality of the situation is, if you read kind of what Sean and I've been writing the last couple of weeks, like, we felt like a week ago, Sean, was that turning point in the Peter Bourque. And sure, they're going to stay in touch with Bourque and those things, but about a week ago, multiple times we've discussed this, was like kind of like, okay, we got to switch gears here and really go try to get Wood, because I think, one, they knew what the financial commitment was, and it was unlikely that it comes down to where they wanted it. And two, they were high enough on Will Wood to say, hey, we gotta go. And of course, what they do a all-inclusive in-home visit last Friday, we'll say. So just keep, those are little facts that, if you don't follow every single school and you don't read every single thing and every really message board, because that's where a lot of that stuff parks. It's just what you see on the outside isn't always what it really is on the inside.
And
can I just ask one follow-up?
Yeah, sure.
I apologize. You go ahead. I'm sure you have something more insightful.
Yeah, just without knowing figures, I think the big thing here is going to be people saying, well, James Franklin spent to get a win, like we talked about. We've talked about with Andrew Olish, which he's done in the past.
He did that for the transfer portal multiple times.
Yeah, and I think that's a bit short-sighted in terms of what you want to do, because you're looking to stockpile the roster. He has a window in which the funding is pretty good right now for Virginia Tech's status, to, as far as that program has sank in the last 10 years. Justin Fuente was terrible. Brent Pry was not the guy to resurrect it. He's got money right now to work with, and going to try and put the best foot forward in terms of an entire roster. Now, is that the best strategy? We saw it fall apart last year with a similar type of approach, albeit an all-in approach to win a championship in 2025. I'm very curious what that salary structure, or whatever you want to call it, looks like in 2028, because I don't know that it's built for the long term. I don't know if it's built to last.
It's
so I'm
sustainable.
very curious to see how all that comes together. So, but again, that's another program like that is not affecting the day-to-day operations of Matt Campbell. That's the way I would go about it. So,
JC Corrigan here.
I'll say that, and just one more thing. My mentions on Twitter, anytime there's anything Bourque or anything Penn State, Virginia Tech related, they're flat out embarrassing. It's really, really funny on both sides. It's just, oh my gosh.
That's what I was saying earlier. Everyone wants a 2-foot rim to dunk on when it comes to social media, and I think that's what JC Corrigan is talking about here. He says, trademark that, T. Frank, and right on time. Salvatore in the chat says, Franklin spanked Campbell again. 2-foot rim. Salvatore, by the way, regular in the comments after the video is a Campbell skeptic. He is not happy with all the 3-star recruits on the Penn State roster. So slightly familiar with his game so far here on social media. I think that's a pretty good mailbag. We got one more segment of the show to get to. If you're enjoying the show, there's a ton of people here. Like the video, subscribe here to the YouTube channel. We do this every single week. The Penn State coaches are on the road for visits. There's been a couple of full court presses, I think, Ryan, that you've been mentioning, but also guys going to see prospects and committed players. So I'm just once again going to open up the floor to you of what have you seen and what do you think is interesting about where these coaches are in the world and who are they seeing?
Well, truthfully, like this week has been much more, we've seen a lot more 2028 recruiting. And of course they can't really communicate with these guys. So, I mean, it makes sense, right? They've been out on the road for 2 weeks. This is week 3. So they go see a lot of their top 2027 guys over the last couple of weeks. Because you have to clarify too, you can go see these guys twice throughout this process. So we saw a lot of those bigger visits, the in homes, the in schools with the top 2027 guys that we're talking about regularly over the last 10 days or so. And now, well, we're a little more than that. We'll say the last 2 weeks because it goes back to what today is, May 14th, right? So a lot of 2028 more this week. Now we did see Sean Curry, for example, and we're seeing a lot of the commits this week, right? Samaje Robinson, Terry Smith, just want to see. Terry was also saw Telfair, I believe it was on Mother's Day on Sunday. So we've seen a good bit of that. To Williger, of course, with Mauser. We are going to, I think next week you'll kind of pick back up a little bit more with some more 2027. Now, we know they're going to go see Nair Crum, pretty good safety prospect. That Deputy Broomfield is going to go see him tomorrow. And, there's a lot of that going on. But I feel like this week in general, as far as like these big, seeing all these photos of, an entire staff in a family room, it's a little more paused or muted this week. And I think you'll see that pick up then one more time next week before Memorial Day. And boom, then we shift into OV season.
What do you think are the most important visits they've made so far in terms of either keeping a guy or going to make a push here as we get into this second half of May?
That's hard to say. I mean, most important, it's kind of how you want to look at that, right? Like, are you talking about retaining guys? Because if retaining guys is really, really important, then Jameer Dean's visit tomorrow is massively important to keep him going to Georgia. If you're talking about trying to get guys, obviously that was big the other day. I think that's going to lead to a commitment. So, one I kind of have circled a little bit, I'm going to write about a bit more, is Sean Curry. That was a visit last Friday. And I'll leave it at that for now because I'm going to write about that maybe a little later today. Right. But yeah, they're all important, T-Frank. I don't know how to say one's more important than the other. It depends on where that recruit is at in the process. If he's close and you're able to close, that's a damn important. That's that's an important visit. Again, and it's the opposite with Jameer Dean, where you're trying to keep him from going elsewhere. So those ones all kind of make sense. But if Penn State gets Khalil Taylor at some time in June, we could circle those as really important visits. Right now, they don't look as important, right? Because it's going to drag out a bit. But they're all important to some degree. Kind of leave it at that.
Okay. Fitz, you have any thoughts on that in terms of guys that are getting visits? Maybe there's somebody that you think is close or looking forward, maybe guys that are going to go visit that you think could put them over the line. I know there's a lot of stuff coming this week. And today, obviously, we covered that on the show today of commits. But are there guys on the horizon you think are interesting and worthy of keeping an eye on?
Yeah, I think Penn State sent their entire offensive staff to Willwood, which tells you something. Penn State did the same with their entire defensive staff the other night. So there's I don't want to say a level of priority, but those are your big swings right there. You're trying to figure out how you can either convince your top targets to, commit right now in the sense of Willwood, or I don't want to say upset their timeline, but prioritize Penn State in their timeline. So I think that's what these visits are about. There's a lot of them where you're all over the place looking at, looking at new talent and looking at guys that you want to get in camp and maybe don't have the ability to get in camp. We saw David Tarawali picked up his offer last week. Saw some of the clips from him working out. I get it. There's a lot to like there in terms of physical prospect. But sometimes you're not going to have that opportunity. If you find a guy that you think is going to blow up in the next month, get there, watch him, decide for yourself if that's going to be the guy. And if so, you can snag a commitment that Tarawali might have gone for another month and picked up 20 more offers. You don't know. Or he could have been the same guy in a month from now. So there's just situations like that where you have to be proactive. And I think, I don't think the staff is doing anything really different than previous staff, but it's a very, very elevated elevated importance time on the calendar. That butchered that last sentence. But Ryan, we talked about this before. Like, you're able to recruit now instead of just watch.
No doubt. And it's a massively different period than what it used to be. And it makes sense with the way the calendar's operated and, the downplaying of 2026 recruiting throughout December now, of course, with guys signing early. Hey, one guy I will mention though, we haven't discussed, I haven't put this on the board yet, but Chief Moore was out to see Jaden Baldwin last night. I learned about that this morning. And that's a recruitment that's going to be very interesting to me, just especially from the Jameer Dean perspective. That's kind of basically the way it's been kind of alluded to me is, depending on what happens with Jameer Dean, they might have to really up it there. And of course, Baldwin has those ties to Pitt and all those kind of things. So I'll be very curious to see how that one plays out. But keep an eye on Jaden Baldwin, wide receiver out of Arizona. I believe Bash is the high school. That was a visit that was a second visit from Penn State staff. Terry Smith was out there earlier. Of course, Terry has strong Aliquippa ties, which is where his dad's from. Just keep an eye on Jaden Baldwin here, especially as it relates to Jameer Dean and how the staff might have to up its ante, I guess, with Baldwin if Dean ends up visiting and all that stuff.
For the podcast audience, Jaden Baldwin is a 3-star prospect. Across the board, 87 overall for Rivals, just as a reference point for Jaden Baldwin. And everyone feels old because his dad was in the NFL when I was in high school. And here we are, all sitting here. Ryan, move us forward into the future. Stop thinking about the past. What are you working on this weekend over at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com? What's coming up from you?
All about watching these two commits potentially, right? Will Wood and Odoh. Those are the two that are going to have most of my focus here today and tomorrow. And chipping away at some notes and trying to figure out where some other guys are at. And hint, wink, wink. Talked about that a little bit ago. We'll see. But, I think we're getting to a period now where you could see maybe one or two more after these guys. Because, again, like Sean said, that the coaches have that power, I guess you would say, at the moment. And they're kind of – all these guys are getting squeezed from a lot of different places, too. It's not like just Penn State. So it'll be interesting. And, chips are falling everywhere. And as they fall everywhere, as we just saw with Notre Dame – it can change things with a bunch of different schools. So it's kind of one of those things where I would love to tell you how the next 5 days are going to play out, but it might depend on who Ohio State gets, who Notre Dame gets, who anybody gets. I don't know. And then all of a sudden that school that we thought was maybe third on the list is now number one. So
could they be most wrapped up by the start of official visits, Fitz? And I apologize. I know we're
Yeah.
Okay. That was, I guess, the follow-up is like, what is this class? Is it really, because we've talked about this before, like last year they wanted to have a big class and obviously that didn't work out in the summer. And so like, is that still like the plan? And do you think like, even if it does feel like it'll just be a couple selected spots left instead of like half the class being added during official visit season?
Sure. I mean, wide receiver will be incredibly important, locking down tight ends, maybe one more. I mean, defensive line, obviously defensive end, like all defensive line, wide receiver. Those are kind of the two spots that popped to me the most, tight end, but that's the one or two guys. So it'll be interesting. There's certainly going to be a couple spots that have heightened importance than others throughout summer, but we'll just have to see how it plays out. And also got to keep these guys committed too, which they're going to do a good job of. I'm not too concerned of that, but Jameer Dean's a unique example, and we'll see where things go.
All right. Well, you guys have a lot of phone calls to make and a lot of words to type, so I won't take any more of your time. It's been an awesome show today. Thank you for that. And, of course, thank you to everyone who's been here to watch and to listen. We will be back next time news breaks, but the BWI Live show returns on Tuesday. Make sure you put us on the calendar. 10 a.m. Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, all off season. I might take a week of vacation. You'll know about it in advance. But we'll be here to talk Penn State football all off season long. Get you ready, get you hyped for the season to come. And, of course, following the recruiting for as long as it goes. I'm Thomas Ryan Carr for Sean Fitz and for Ryan Snyder. This is the BWI Live Recruiting Show. Talk to you next time.